The 2024-25 NHL season is officially underway. I posted a video on the second channel late last night recapping the triple header from night one. If you guys didn't catch that video, be sure to go and check it out and let me know if that's something that interests you and you want to see more of it, because I had a lot of fun making that video. For today's video though, I made up a list of players that I think need to have a big bounce back season. As always, I want to know what you guys are thinking, so if there's any player that I don't talk about in this video that you feel like needs to bounce back this year, be sure to let me know who those players are and why down below in the comments. And if this is your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to hit 100,000 subscribers this season. So with that all being said, let's go ahead and start off with a player who has already played a game, and let's just say he's not off to a good start. That player is Joonas Korpisalo, goaltender for the Boston Bruins. Now, if I made this video 2 weeks ago, I would say Korpisalo probably would have been the #1 guy that needed to bounce back the most, because at the time, Jeremy Swayman wasn't signed, and it was looking like the negotiations between him and Boston were going to bleed into the regular season. As we know now, that is not what happened, and Swayman is signed, so I don't think it's as important now for Korpisalo to bounce back. I don't think his performance is going to make or break the Boston Bruins season, because we know Swayman is going to be the #1 guy. He's likely going to start 50+ games. That being said, though, it would be nice for the Boston Bruins to know that they have a reliable option other than Jeremy Swayman. Even though Jeremy Swayman has been elite in his NHL career thus far, this is a different situation for him. He's never had a season in which he had to go out there and start 50+ games. If Swayman goes through any stretches this season where he struggles, the Boston Bruins no longer have the option of just going to a Vezina Trophy winner in Linus Ullmark. Having two elite goaltenders is such a massive reason why the Bruins have been such a dominant regular season team over the last couple of seasons. Now, I don't think anybody is expecting Joonas Korpisalo to be as good or near as good as Linus Ullmark was with the Boston Bruins, but asking him to be just serviceable and solid, I don't think that's asking for a whole lot. This is a guy who's had very good seasons in the NHL in the past, and not that long ago, prior to last season with the Senators, in a year split between the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Los Angeles Kings, he had very strong numbers. Even if Joonas Korpisalo can just get back to being a guy with a .905-ish save percentage, I think the Boston Bruins will gladly take that. Moving on now to the next player on my list, we have Trevor Zegras of the Anaheim Ducks. Last season was pretty rocky for Trevor Zegras, and it started off that way before the season even began. He had a long, drawn-out negotiation process with the Anaheim Ducks. He didn't end up signing a contract until right before the regular season began. He started off the season slow, and in the end was never really able to get it going. Injuries limited Trevor Zegras to just 31 games, and in those 31 games, just 6 goals and 15 points. A points per game average of just 0.484, which is a massive drop-off from the 2 seasons prior, in which Trevor Zegras was right around 0.8 points per game. The rocky contract negotiations and his performance last season led to Trevor Zegras' name being floated around quite a bit in trade rumors, and whether the Anaheim Ducks view Trevor Zegras as a big core piece for them as they truck through this rebuild, or they view him as a potential trade chip, either way, you want him to bounce back, you want him to get back to the level he was at in his rookie and sophomore seasons, or even a level above that. I think Zegras is a player with the skill and potential to be a point per game guy, and that's obviously a very valuable asset to have on your team as someone who can contribute to winning games, or as a very valuable trade chip. Zegras is definitely not the kind of guy you want to just go and sell low on. Ultimately, I think it was a very good decision for the Anaheim Ducks not to trade him in the offseason. Next up on my list, we have Pierre-Luc Dubois of the Washington Capitals. He was sent to Washington from Los Angeles back in June in a 1-for-1 swap for goaltender Darcy Kuemper. We all know how Dubois' first and only season with the LA Kings went. It was probably the worst season of his entire career. He played in all 82 games and finished with just 16 goals and 40 points. At one point in the season, he was called out publicly by then head coach Todd McLellan before McLellan was let go by the LA Kings. And that wasn't the first time that Dubois was publicly called out by a head coach either. I'm sure everybody remembers his final shift as a member of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Dubois has definitely been a polarizing player throughout his career, but there's no doubt about it, when he's on top of his game, he's capable of being a difference maker. One that's worth $8.5 million a season? Probably not, but for a team like the Washington Capitals, who are looking to score more goals this season, they could definitely benefit from Pierre-Luc Dubois being a 25+ goal, 60-point guy for them, which he's shown he's capable of doing in the past. Moving along now to the next player on my list, we have the man that Pierre-Luc Dubois was traded for, Darcy Kuemper, goaltender for the Los Angeles Kings. The LA Kings goaltending situation has been a bit of a revolving door over the last few seasons. Their Game 1 starter for the 2022 playoffs was Jonathan Quick. Their Game 1 starter for the 2023 playoffs was Joonas Korpisalo. And in 2024, it was Cam Talbot. If the LA Kings are able to make the playoffs again this season, it's looking like once again they will have a completely different starter for Game 1. That's 4 different Game 1 starters in 4 years, again, if they make the playoffs this year. Now, Darcy Kuemper is signed for 3 more seasons at a cap hit of $5.25 million, so it would be nice for the LA Kings if he can bounce back from a terrible season last year with the Capitals and provide some stability for LA in net. Darcy Kuemper is a guy who, prior to last season with the Washington Capitals, throughout his career had pretty consistently always been an above average goaltender, which is what landed him that big contract with the Washington Capitals in the first place. So if you're a Los Angeles Kings fan, I think there's definitely reason to be optimistic about Kuemper. But he is 34, and if last season was just the start of his decline, then I think the Kings could be in some trouble. Moving on now, next up on my list, we have Jonathan Huberdeau of the Calgary Flames. I can't remember if I made a video like this last year, but if I did, I would imagine Jonathan Huberdeau was on it then as well. Huberdeau has now had 2 very mediocre seasons as a member of the Calgary Flames, especially for a guy who makes $10.5 million a season. For whatever reason, Huberdeau just has not been the same player since coming from Florida to Calgary, and at this point, I think it's safe to assume he's never going to get back to the level he was at in 2022, where he put up 115 points. Now, the Flames are in a much different situation heading into this season than they were when Huberdeau first arrived in Calgary. I don't think anybody expects this Flames team to make any noise or be a playoff team, so it's not like Huberdeau's performance is going to make or break the Calgary Flames season or be the deciding factor on if they make the playoffs or not, but still, you never want to be paying a guy $10.5 million a season to be as mediocre as he has been throughout his first 2 years as a member of the Calgary Flames. And hey, there really is no such thing as an untradeable contract in the NHL. We saw Erik Karlsson dealt from San Jose after he won the Norris Trophy, even though Erik Karlsson had a lot less years left on his deal at the time he was traded than Huberdeau has now, but still, if Huberdeau's able to pop off over these next few seasons, you never know. Maybe this is a contract that the Calgary Flames would be able to get out from under. In order for that to happen though, at any point throughout this contract, he needs to start playing better, because there's not going to be a team out there willing to trade for a 50-point winger who doesn't have a strong defensive game that makes $10.5 million. Next up on my list, we have Matty Beniers of the Seattle Kraken, who, after winning the Calder Trophy in 2023, had a bit of a sophomore slump this past season, finished with just 15 goals and 37 points in 77 games. Now, even when Beniers isn't producing offensively, he's still an effective player. At such a young age, he's already a very well-rounded and complete 200-foot centerman, but the Seattle Kraken need to find a way to score more goals this season. After being one of the best offensive teams in the league in 2023, their offense fell off of a cliff last season. Beniers was definitely not the only member on the Kraken roster who saw a big regression in terms of their point production. I don't think Beniers is ever going to be a guy who scores 90 or 100 points in a season, but if the Kraken want to get back into the postseason, they're going to need more than 37 points from Beniers. He is one of their main drivers of offense, not just in terms of creating offense for himself, but creating offense for his line mates as well. Moving on now to the next player on my list, the last goaltender that we're going to talk about in this video, Andrei Vasilevskiy of the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's weird seeing Vasilevskiy included in a video like this because throughout his career he's just been Mr. Consistent, but I would say this past season was probably the worst year of Andrei Vasilevskiy's career. Prior to last season, he had never finished a season with a save percentage below .910, and this past season it was only .900 on the dot, and he also finished the year with a negative 1.24 goals saved above expected. Now, his performance was still good enough for the Tampa Bay Lightning to secure a wildcard spot, but I think they're going to need a little bit more from him this season with the Atlantic Division getting better and some teams looking to make that next step and get back into the postseason. Of all the players I've talked about in this video so far though, Andrei Vasilevskiy is probably the guy that I would worry about the least. Like I just mentioned, he has been Mr. Consistent throughout his NHL career, and it's not like Vasilevskiy was awful this past season either. It's just he's a guy that I think everyone is used to holding to such a high standard, so when his numbers are mediocre, it's very shocking. And now finally, finishing up the video with the last player on my list, we have Peyton Krebs of the Buffalo Sabres. Now, some of you might think it doesn't make any sense to have Peyton Krebs in this video because how can you bounce back when you've never really even broken out yet? But prior to this past season, it looked at the very least like Peyton Krebs was a guy who was, on the right trajectory and he was trending upwards. But this past season, like many other players on the Buffalo Sabres, Peyton Krebs' offensive production kind of hit a wall and he finished with just 4 goals in 80 games. The Sabres need to score more this season. Peyton Krebs is a guy who I think a lot of Sabres fans have kind of been waiting to take that next step, especially as a guy who was one of the key pieces that came over from the Vegas Golden Knights in the Jack Eichel trade. So that is going to wrap up today's video. That is my list of NHL players that I think need to bounce back in the 2024-25 NHL season. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I always want to know what you guys are thinking, so if there's anybody that I didn't talk about today that you feel like need to bounce back this season, let me know who those players are and why down below in the comments. If you made it all this way to the end of the video and you ended up enjoying yourself, please remember to leave a like. It's the best way to let me know that you enjoyed, and it does actually help out the videos a ton. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all again soon.